to start this event. And I look around and man, it's amazing to see how when you start. How many of you ever began a journey and didn't quite know where this is rhetorical, right? You know where you were headed, right? And so I think back about 2 years ago, and I met Jimmy at an event much like this. And for those of you that know what I'm talking about, stand on your feet. Yeah. Stand on your feet. That Mastermind that we were a part of about 2 years ago. Okay? And so we'll talk about a few things tonight, and one of those is the principle of impacting people's lives, right? And developing that following, building that trust. And so as the video said, I really like to help people get better results in their lives. Okay? Now I like a lot of participation. I don't like to lecture. So we're going to be engaged. How many of you, again rhetorical, would like to get better results in your life? Now don't fool me now. Raise your hand high if you want better results in your life. Don't say it just because I'm asking you. You don't want somebody to look at you and say, you don't. I want you to say it because you mean it, because I have the secret. It's really not a secret. Speaking of which, Joe brought up an audio. Where'd he go? Did he leave? Joseph brought, there he is right here. You get rid of coupons. Earl Nightingale, The Stranger's Secret. It was one of the first introductions to this whole ideal of personal development that I had. And if you think back in the, what was it, 60s, that audio came out, whenever that was, it is the only audio to ever go gold. Think about that. An audio went gold. So I'm selling that for you. So if an audio of personal development information went gold, there must be some valuable information on that audio. So again, I challenge you. Thanks, Joe, for bringing that up. Yeah. It's amazing. To the point that I've transcribed that audio several times. You know what that means? Even back in the days of, you know, where you write, hit pause, hit reverse, hit play, write, hit pause, hit reverse. I've transcribed that audio several times. Why? Because if you could have access to the secret of success, why wouldn't you? Right? I mean, if there was a box under this table that said, if you grab this box and open it up, if you can get in this box, in it lies the secrets of success. How many of you would walk out of here without taking a peek in it? But if you don't go home tonight and listen to that audio at least a couple times, that's exactly what you're doing. Because thoughts do become things, right? Unless you're Mr. Harris and you only think of girls and he didn't become a girl. But I feel you. And so our thoughts do become things. But how many of you have thoughts sometimes that you don't quite know where they came from, right? But you sit there and you have them, right? And you know you're not a bad person, you know you're not a negative person, but you just have these thoughts, right? And so if you heard in the video, I truly believe that we are the results. We are who we are, what we are, and where we are in life because of our what? Our thinking, okay? Now, I'm going to try to take you on a journey real quickly, and again, I'm not going to pretend that y'all want to sit here all night. So I'm from a big metropolis, y'all may have heard of it, called Dunn, North Carolina. Population 10,000. Unless somebody died today, then it's like 9,999. Went to a predominantly white high school. You know, didn't have a whole lot of exposure. Came out of high school, came to college here at NC State, where I managed to cram 4 years into 5.5, Cheryl. Y'all look at that later. And graduated with about $30,000 in student loan debt and another $10,000 in credit card debt. Okay? I'm going to lay a pretty ugly scenario out to you guys because my only goal tonight is to inspire you. I mean, no matter where you are, Jimmy asked, you know, I think Mr. Harris asked, who's going through something? Right? And whether you raise your hand or not, we know the answer. Because I know that each of us, we're either going into something, we're in something, or we're coming out of something. And if you're on the coming out, guess what? You're going back into something. Okay? History has an uncanny way of repeating itself. And if you can get good at following history, following the waves, see, this goes back to thinking. You know, so I won't get too far ahead of myself. And so when I graduated college, no idea what I wanted to do, be, or become. Right? We talked about purpose, Sherry, and man, if God would just be so kind and just send us down a memo and say, here's your purpose, how much simpler would life be? But see, here's the challenge. We're so distracted. And it's not that our purpose is out there. You know where your purpose is? It's in here. It's not in the mountaintop out there. It's not in the valley. It's very deep on the inside of us. And so our thoughts, okay, getting back to that, is how we uncover or discover our purpose. And so in college, you know, I had never had a problem working. I was working 40-hour a week when I was 13 years old, cutting grass, right? So working was never the issue. Worked 2 or 3 part-time jobs while I was in college, still graduated with all that debt, right? And when I graduated college, I graduated, and because I didn't have the right thinking, okay, I was blessed to get a good job. I was in agriculture. My degree at college was agriculture, but I knew I didn't want to pursue that, right? So 5.5 years wasn't the world for it. You know, $40,000 worth of debt wasn't the world for it. So I jumped right into sales and marketing with a company called 360, which later became Alltel, which is now Verizon. And so my first year out of college, I probably earned 50, 60 grand in sales. Not bad, right? And because I felt like I was making good money, I went out and I bought a brand new truck. Had a nice apartment over in North Hills, traveling, living the good life. Okay, so I thought. I was chasing this thing that we labeled success. Okay, and I never forget it. One MLK weekend, Martin Luther King came up a couple times, so I'll tell this story, Jimmy. One MLK weekend, I was one of the top producers in this store at the time, and another guy always were in #1 or #2 in sales. And so being from that big metropolis of Dunn, North Carolina, I had to support our very first MLK breakfast and parade. And so I went to my boss and I said, hey boss, I'm going to take Monday off, the holiday, so I can attend Dunn, North Carolina's very first inaugural MLK breakfast and parade. And he looked me in the face and he said, no, you're not. I could have bit nails. I said, yes, I am. He said, no, you can either go to that parade or you can go in the back and pack up your stuff. It was the first time in my life I realized I was cut from a little bit different cloth, because guess what I did? I went and packed up my stuff and I went to that parade. Now, it wasn't the smartest decision at the time, because I told you what I had already created for myself. Debt. But what it did is help to uncover that entrepreneur that was on the inside of me. Because I went from up here, living what I felt like was the good life, the successful life, to being broke, busted, and disgusted. Having absolutely nothing. So I was talking to a friend of mine, well actually a cousin of mine lived in Baltimore, who his brother lived in New York, and they told me about this thing called peddling clothes and pocketbooks, and y'all know what I'm talking about. If you're over 35, you know what I'm talking about. And no joke, guys, let me tell you, when you get hungry enough, you'll do what you got to do. So every Thursday night, I would go to Enterprise Rental, I would rent a Tahoe or Suburban. I would leave at midnight. By 7, 8 o'clock, I was in New York City. I would take a nap. By 9 o'clock, all the stores opened up. And I would go up in these stores, in these 5th and 6th floors. Pick up these clothes, had this big bag. I'm walking down New York City, down the street like this, boom, right? Pocket full of money. I would drive back home that night. I'd be back home and done that Friday night. And that weekend, I peddled clothes. I did that probably every weekend for about 6 months. And then the winter time came. I didn't want to play with the New York winter, so let that go. That was my very first taste of entrepreneurial freedom. From there, I was introduced to the car business. Started selling cars over at Leith Honda, and had very good success my very first month in the car business. Let me give you the secret to success. Mentorship. My first month in the car business, I earned 13 grand doing what the mentor told me how to do. After I felt like I knew what I was doing, guess where my income went? Down. So I did car sales for about a year, and I was very frustrated, very just not satisfied with it. I had a dirty taste in my mouth about selling cars because I knew there was a bigger purpose on the inside of me, and I could never get comfortable. And so I started, I quit the car business after a year, And I went out with another friend of mine, and we opened our own cell phone store over in Durham, North Carolina, off of Hillsborough Street, Hillsborough Road. Failed opportunity, bad timing, we didn't know what we was doing, so that failed. Went back to the car business for another year. They had changed the comp plan and everything. It was even uglier than it was the first time. I did get frustrated. And I'll never forget, I'm walking around the car lot and I said, God, there's got to be more to life than this. Anybody ever felt like that? Yeah. Wave your hand high if you ever felt like there's got to be more to life than this. Because here's where my life actually changed. Be careful what you pray for. So I told God, I said, I'm sick and tired of this. There's got to be more. So one Sunday night, so before that, a friend of mine came to me. I'm about 23, 24 years old at the time. High school diploma, college degree. I've never read a book. I heard him tell you this story. By this point in my life, I've never read a book cover to cover. How do I have a high school diploma, college degree? Come see me out there, I gave you the secret. Never read a book. So a friend of mine came up to me and said, Ryan, I got a book you need. I think he saw what I was going through. He said, I got a book you need to read. And the name of that book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I absolutely devoured that book in like one evening. Because what was inside of the pages of that book were the answers to what was puzzling me, to what was frustrating me. So another principle, read. You want a shortcut to success? There's two ways to be successful. Mistakes and mentors. What's the secret to success? The experiences of others. The information of others. You don't have time to learn it all. So learn from the mistakes that others have already made down the pathway that you're going. Okay? And so when I read that book, it opened my eyes totally, completely. And guess what I did? Got even more frustrated. So one Sunday night, after a long day of church, I decided I was going to drive down to Tampa, Florida, to see a friend of mine. Pretty competitive person, and so I got in the car and said, I'm going to drive nonstop until I get to Tampa, Florida. My mom packed me a cooler, put it over there. I was ready, good to go. Didn't drink anything pretty much all the day, so I wouldn't have to stop. I drove 8 hours straight, got to about an hour outside of Tampa, decided I had gotten too sleepy to continue. So I made a deal with myself that I'll stop at the next exit. Well, I fell asleep through that exit, and I woke up in the median of I-4. I had ran up under a tractor trailer, ripped the roof off the car, and my car came resting in the median of I-4. I woke up, looked straight into the sky, there was no roof on the car, and I would have walked away, except this leg was broke. So when I went to put this leg out the car, and I went to put this one, I felt the bone do that, but the leg didn't go anywhere, so it was a pretty good sign that something was wrong. So I sat there, laid the seat back, and relaxed. I heard the ambulance, the emergency responders coming over, talking over my shoulder, oh, he's dead, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, they airlifted me to Orlando, put me back together. 3 days after that, they flew me back home to North Carolina. 7 days after that, the church that my father had been pastoring for less than a year was completely destroyed by fire. And I'm back in this great metropolis of Dunn, starting my life all over again. Second time, I am absolutely broke. Y'all say it with me. Busted and disgusted. Anybody been there? So I've been there twice already, and I'm 25 years old. Okay? See, for some reason, I thought I was going to have made it by the end, Dr. Harris. Yeah. Deshaun, you feel the same way? I'm literally 25 years old, and I was mad that I hadn't made it. Like, I was frustrated. Like, I felt like I should have been just living the life of my dreams at 25. But there was more to the story. So I moved back to Dunn. You know, of course, me and my dad did what we need to do to build the church, but I don't want to go off on that pathway. But what I did was, well, and through that process, though, tell you how God works. Through the process of rebuilding the church, I was introduced to, for the first time in my life, what I considered to be a mentor. This was a guy who had what I call fruit on the tree. He was successful. He was a successful insurance agent. He was getting incredible results. And although I didn't have an interest in insurance, I knew enough to know that he's doing something that I'm not doing. And I started going to his Friday morning workshops, trainings, where he was at the front of the room doing pretty much what I'm doing. I sat where you guys are sitting. This is why I do what I do. Because it was in that room that my life absolutely changed. What happened in that room, you ask? You know, being from Dunn, North Carolina, my parents, you know, did the best they knew how. My father worked for a Goodyear tire company called Kelly Springfield, 33 and a half years, retired, but he didn't have the results that he wanted, that I wanted in my life. So although I love my dad, guess who couldn't teach me how to have the success that I desired? Okay? And so I was in the front of this, I was sitting where you guys are sitting, and this guy was saying things that I had never heard before in my life. He said things like, Ryan, it's not what happens to you that determines your success. It's what you do with what happens to you. How many of you know that happens? To all of us. So if you focus on what happens, you get the results of those who don't have the results you desire. But if you focus on not reacting, but responding to what happens. Now, is that easy to do? Absolutely not. But what he told me, he said, Ryan, there's no such thing as bad weather, Cheryl. Just bad clothing. Right? He said, I said, man, things just cost too much. He said, no, you can't afford it. He said, Ryan, you've been working for a long time. Like, why aren't you doing better? Why don't you make more money? I said, this is all the company pays. He says, isn't there other people at the company that make more money than you? I said, well, sure. So this isn't all the company pays. This is all the company pays you. He said, if you got better and improved yourself, wouldn't the company pay you? He said, sometimes we put the expensive things on the high shelf. So you got to stand on the books you read in order to reach it. He said, success isn't something that you pursue. He said, what you pursue will elude you. It's like chasing butterflies. It's like chasing women, Dr. Harris. Most of the time, it what? Gets away from you. He says, success isn't something you pursue. Success is something you attract by becoming an attractive person. Not hair did, nails did, everything did, no. By becoming a person of value. By becoming a person that when you walk in the room, people are attracted to you. Because you listen, because you smile, because you have a positive attitude. People want to be around. How do you become more valuable? You see, so we don't have to go to work on the job. We don't have to go to work on all these things. You got to go to work on you. He said, Ryan, how are you doing financially? I said, man, not so good. He said, well, who are you taking your financial advice from? All the manhood and ego I could muster up, I said, myself. And he looked me in the eye and said, you got to stop listening to that idiot. From that moment on, I knew that my success was limited by my own thinking. Einstein was a pretty smart guy. What did he say? You can't fix a problem with the same level of thinking of which it was created. Think about that. So we all suggested earlier that we have some challenges in our life, right? Well, the same thinking that created it, I promise you, you're not going to get a great idea to fix it. Because it was the thinking that created it. What do you need in order to fix that problem? New thinking, new ideas, new relationships, new associations. You need some new insight. John Maxwell calls it the law of the lid. You're never going to grow above what? What you know. You're limited by your own capacity. And he said, Ryan, until you start reading, he took me in his office one day, there was books all around the wall. He said, until you have a room in your house that looks like this, you'll never be successful. I was like, man, dang. And so guess what I did? No, I started reading. I started buying them. I had to start, right? Right? You know, I got a pretty extensive library. Now, most of them I've read now, but I didn't start reading. I wasn't that good, and I ain't just flip the switch and everything changed. No, it was a process. He said, Ryan, who you hanging out with? Are the people you're hanging out with pushing you, challenging you to become that person? Here's another principle. Are the results that you wish to achieve. Okay? We all have some things we want to accomplish, right? are the results you wish to achieve. Is the person who you are that you want to become, is it congruent with who you are today? With the success, the level of success you want to achieve. Let me ask it a different way. If you keep doing what you've been doing, will you get the result that you desire? If the answer is no, then guess what? Listen, I love Dr. Harris's book. Why? Guys, there are laws and principles that govern success in every area of our lives. Let me say that again. There are laws and principles of success that determine whether or not we become successful or not. You say, well, I don't like that rule. But when you get your own earth, you can create your own rules. But as long as you live here, you got to play by the rules. What are the rules? Okay, there's a law called gravity. Y'all know how that works? If you jump off the roof of a house, whether you're a saint or a sinner, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to be a hurt saint or sinner. So, yeah, there are some moral components to it, but in general, why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Because the rich play by the rules. Hate them all you want, they play by the rules. Let me ask the question again. Are the results that you want congruent with your current behaviors? If the answer is no, then you got to bring that into balance. And when they align, when your behaviors align with the results that you want, then you unlock the lock to success. You say, Ryan, you are who you are, where you are, and what you are in life because of your programming. You say, you want to get better results in your life? I said, absolutely. You say, well, what determines your results? Hey, I'm not answering these questions. You tell me. Your behaviors. Would you agree? All right. Our results are solely dictated on our behaviors. Right? But what determines our behaviors? I gave you the answer several times. Our thinking. Right? See, most of us, if we want to get better results in our lives, we just continue to do more of the wrong thing. And it doesn't matter how fast you run if you're running on the wrong track. The worst thing in life is to get to the top of the ladder and realize that it's leaning against the wrong wall. So how do we get the results that we want? We don't stop at behaviors. We've got to change our what? Thinking. We've got to change our inputs. How do you get a computer to do Microsoft Word? Come on. You install the software. If you don't install the software, will it perform the operation? Absolutely not. And as brilliant as we are, if you don't install the software, you don't get the results. Now here's the principle. Our brains, our minds do not occupy a vacuum. So you don't just wake up one day and say, I no longer want to think like that. That's not how it happens. How do you get the bad thoughts out? You got to put new information in. You got to reprogram your thinking. And guys, when you reprogram your thinking, what does that change? Your behaviors. And when your behaviors change, what do you get? Better results. And that's the process. That's the secret to success. Now you say, okay, Ryan, how do I change my thinking? By developing a philosophy. And it's really simple, guys. And if you study anybody that's successful, let me tell you some research I've done. I've looked high, low, all around, read several books, read several autobiographies. I've researched this for them. And I've never found a successful person who quit. So how do you get the right thinking? Well, there's a process that you've got to go through. And the first thing you've got to do, and I think somewhere over in Romans chapter 5, it talks about embracing suffering. Anybody suffer in their life? Learning to embrace suffering is not a behavior issue. It's a what? Because remember, it happens to all of us. So it's a thinking component. So when we're going through things, we can't allow our challenges, talk about that emotional quotient, we can't allow our challenges and our frustrations to dictate our behaviors, right? Because when you know and understand that your suffering produces perseverance, and then your perseverance develops character, and then your character produces hope. And that's all we want. That's all we need. You give a man a little bit of hope, and there's nothing he can't do. But most of us are distracted by the sufferings that are really just lies. They're really just distracted. They're not even real. Right? Because the things that we're going through, they really only last for a moment. But many of us make long-term decisions while we're going through short-term circumstances. And the result of those decisions don't generally pay off well. So back to this idea of thinking. How do we change our thinking? Who wants to change your thinking? Do you agree that if you change your thinking, who agrees? If you change your thinking, you can change your behaviors, you get better results. So how do you change your thinking? We talked about reprogramming. So how do you reprogram? I want to give you 3 things, and then I'm going to sit down and shut up. 3 inputs. Read. Yeah. What are you reading? Okay. And read from a book, not a tablet. Do the research. You want to know why I said that. Read from a book, not a tablet. Second thing is listen to audios, tapes, cassettes. Turn off the radio. How many of you know why would we pay attention to things that we can't control or dictate? Why do we spend so much time focusing on things that we have absolutely no control over? That's called a distraction. Thoughts become things. What you focus on grows. So we got to change our inputs. We got to change what we read. We got to change what we listen to. And most importantly, because the third one, if you get that right, you're going to be forced to change the other 2. The third input is change your associations. Change who you're hanging out with. I want all of you to get the 5 people you spend the most time with right now in your head. Everybody got it? Now I want you to take the average of their income. But somehow we think that we're going to be the one that's just going to magically out-earn those with whom we're associated. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You can smile, Renee. It's okay. Just smile. There you go. Everybody take a deep breath. Now don't go start deleting all your Facebook friends. They're not real, no way. Charlie Tremendous Jones, very famous public speaker, says this. Here's my second close. I told you my father's a pastor. Pastor, brother. Appreciate this. Charlie Tremendous Jones says this. 5 years from now, this quote absolutely changed my life. He said, 5 years from now, you will be the same. Okay? Everybody got a picture of that? 5 years from now, you will be the same. Except for the books you read and the people with whom you associate with. But with this economy, that's not even true anymore. 5 years from now, you'll be worse than you are today if you don't change something in your life. We have to be intentional. This doesn't happen on accident, guys. You don't just arrive at success on accident. It's very, very intentional. What are those daily disciplines that you're engaging in on a regular basis? Are they congruent with the results that you want to achieve? If they're not, You have to change some things. Here's a good one. You want some things in your life to change? You got to change some things in your life. For things to change, point to yourself and say, I got to change. Government's not going to do it. It's a failed system. Facebook. It's up to you. Now, final close. Everybody stand on your feet. And with everything you got, I want you to point to yourself and say, if it's to be, it's up to me.
It's up to me.
If it's to be, it's up to me.
It's up to me.
If it's to be,
If it's to be,